there are more fundamental structural problems in the society, and they are not going to turn around in the horizon of a year, with what you guys in business schools call short term. So you might be able to stabilize the SOEs, but their debt levels are just so unsustainably high that you got to play catch up firstly. Now, I'm sure you guys would be happy if there's a plan to play catch up. But the question then is, ordinarily you start from a base of zero and you progressively build on it. And the ANC has successfully, as a government, managed to construct the largest social welfare state in sub-Saharan Africa. They haven't been able to place it on a growth trajectory. Now, how does it go onto a growth trajectory? If you have effective, as they call, service delivery. But beyond service delivery, you have to incentivize people. You've got to put money in their pockets. And so when people started talking about the stimulus, it wasn't a stimulus, it was a stabilization. It's not a stimulus because there are no incentives provided. You're not putting any money back into anyone's pockets. You're not creating any tax breaks. You're not taxing the wealthy slightly more. You're not cutting big taxes for people like me. You can cut taxes, you can increase taxes for people on my left. You must reduce taxes for people on my right.
There we go.
But none of that happened, right?
Your left.
None of that happened.
Look,
And it is
from a fiscal point of view, there is no room for a stimulus.
I agree.
It was different in 2007, 2008. We went from a small surplus to a deficit of 6 point something.
Right.
That was a stimulus.
Right, we can agree that we're in a deficit, and we agree we've got no room to maneuver. The question, though, is now who then can play a role to stimulate something? And unfortunately, it's a private sector.
So-
You can't continue having a craven private sector, which is corrupt, collusive, price fixing, stealing, doing all of those things, and then pretending as if they can't actually do anything. They're the only people who have room for maneuver.
I think we fundamentally have to change the perspective from which we look at economic growth. Everybody says we need growth in this country. Now, there was a time when growth was actually economic and GDP growth was to say, what did we do this year? We built cars, we built houses, we sold CDs, and we calculate all of that and we say that's economic growth. And therefore we're progressing, we're measuring progress. Now it's actually a means to an end. First we want to insert it, and then finally people will get work, which is the old school of thinking, right? That's the old economics of trickle down. I suspect it's because from the perspective where we look at it from the investment, big investment, foreign investment perspective in which they want to see growth before they invest, then they invest and then people get jobs. As opposed to a local perspective in which you invest in people, you say to people, you invest in people to go and be able to participate, to do things, to farm, to make their own clothes, to do all of these things. And then you calculate their efforts and you say, well, the economy is growing. But you're going to have to decide which one will come first. We know now that the perspective of growth first hasn't been happening for some years. So then it might be time to change the perspective and say, how do we actually get our people engaged in doing things so that actually then they are the ones creating growth? And I think it's even in the ways sometimes we think about infrastructure. So we think about infrastructure in big ways, big highways, big things. And actually reinforcing that same thing we say excludes people. Instead of saying, how do we actually help infrastructure where people are? In rural areas, agricultural storage, irrigation, seeds, all of these things, so that people are doing things and then participating in the economy. And so that perspective is the same one that people keep saying, we want to own the economy. Because in a sense, the economy is centered. It's the big, buildings, it's the banks. It isn't what people are doing on a daily basis. It is their own economic activity that I am a person, I'm an economic agent, I am part of the economy. So whatever I can do, I should be able to do. So most of our people are focused in owning the mines because the mines are the economy. Focused in owning the banks because the banks are the economy. Focused on owning the land because the land is the economy. As opposed to how am I actually going to be able to participate in this environment?